Evening and welcome everyone. But before I proceed, I'd like to welcome on behalf of everyone here to our new councillor, Councillor Mark Rowland. Welcome. Good to have you here. Right, I am chairing this meeting of the council, and the meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be recorded except where there are confidential or exempt items. If any member of the public attending the meeting objects to being filmed, please advise us immediately and we will ensure that they are not included in the filming. Members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. If you are intending to do so, oh gosh, I've lost my thing. Sorry. Obviously it's not a touch screen, must remember that. Right. Members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. If you are intending to so do, please could you inform the committee clerk. May I also ask that all mobile phones are either on silent or switched off, and that your laptops are switched to silent. If you hear the fire alarm, please leave the building immediately via a fire exit and make your way to the assembly point at Ipswich Football Ground. Now, I'm not a football fanatic, so I gather that such an occasion would please a lot of members this evening. Okay, apologies for absence.
Yes, many thanks, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillors Paul Clover, Margaret Maybury, Stephen Plum, Sally Davis, Peter Beer and Mark Newman.
Thank you. Declaration of interest by councillors? None. We now paper BC 2519, which are the minutes of the last meeting. I request any issues with regard to accuracy. So it's accuracy only. Any comments, any notes? Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I want to go throughout the minutes. However, item number 53.16, regarding my query of the last meeting, it really is a question of omission. You know, we omit the offer by Councillor McCraw to smooth things out and explain the situation properly. We omit the accusation from Councillor Register that perhaps I should have taken this matter up at the earlier meetings, although I hadn't been present. And so, whilst they are accurate, they are incomplete.
It's a transcript of the discussion that took place. Are you saying it's not?
It's not a transcript.
It's not a transcript, right. I'm a bit confused as to what points you're trying to make in reference to accuracy.
Well, Madam, you know, they're accurate as far as they go, but they contain omissions. And omissions are very relevant. I mean, I appreciate Councillor McGraw's offer to, you know, see? We also had Council Register, you know, saying that I should have picked this up.
You consider them to be inaccurate, and therefore you should be presenting to us the correction for those inaccuracies. So whether something is missing, then tell us what it is you want inserted.
Thank you for that illustration.
Yes. Councillor Holt? Okay.
We have received one alteration to the one alteration request to the minutes from Councillor Peter Beer, and I'm happy that that's accepted. It's to do with at the start of the meeting when it came to notifying of councillors who unfortunately passed away. it was noted that Councillor Peter Beer raised a number of councillors who had also unfortunately passed away. So I'm happy to make that change.
Yeah, I remember that. I thought it was in. Right. Okay. Therefore, can I have a proposer, please, to accept the minutes? Councillor Davis. And can I have a seconder, please? Councillor McCraw. And it will be the vote will be conducted by a show of hands. Okay, it's carried.
Yeah.
This is carried, thank you. Now we move to paper BC 2520, which is for noting. And I would like you all to share my thanks to Cathy Nixon, Councillor Ward, Councillor Parker, Councillor Henry, Nunn, McLaren, Maybury and Councillor Davis for supporting me at my civic service on Saturday afternoon, which was a pretty hard-hitting event. And I have to say thank you, because it did help me to get through it. Thank you very much. I now hand over to the leader for the leader's announcements.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, as leader, I would also like to welcome Councillor Mark Rowland to the Chamber and congratulate him on his by-election win in Copdock and Washbrook last week. Councillor Rowland joins us at a challenging time due to the uncertainties of local government reorganisation and the Fair Funding Review 2.0, with its implications for next year's and future finance settlements. But I am proud that we continue to find ways to innovate and to improve the quality of lives for our residents, despite the day-to-day pressures we face. Having been named Council of the Year in 2024 by public sector experts IESE, we welcomed them back at the start of this month, along with representatives of councils and other organisations, for a follow-up visit, and we were able to further impress the panel by showcasing our continuing work since then across our two districts, including our investment in affordable housing, in community health and well-being, and our climate change and biodiversity work. We have finally made it easier for owners of Grade 2 listed buildings to make their homes more energy efficient. Our district has one of the highest numbers of listed properties in the country, but these historic properties often suffer from poor energy performance due to their original features, poorly fitting windows and single glazing. It leads to higher bills for owners and is costly for the environment. In the past, owners had to apply to the councils for listed building consent to make upgrades. But working closely with Historic England, we have developed a local listed building consent order for double and secondary glazing, and after a lot of time and work, this was formally made at the beginning of this month. And we are the first rural councils in the country to successfully achieve this. Cabinet approved Suffolk's new local nature recovery strategy earlier this month, and the strategy has been designed to identify the areas across Suffolk where restoring or improving habitats will deliver the greatest benefits for nature and people. It maps existing habitats, highlights priority areas for improvement, and outlines opportunities for targeted action. It's all part of a nationwide initiative which was set out in the Environment Act 2021. Suffolk County Council is leading on the project with input from all the district and borough councils, including Babergh, conservation bodies, land managers, and the wider public. We also continue to encourage the next generation to tackle climate change, recently hosting our second School Green Skills Summit. The event at RHS saw student delegates from 10 of our schools discussing real-world issues. And I was honoured to take part in a Q&A session as part of the day. And I hope that the global leaders gathering in Brazil for COP30 next month share the same passion for collaboration and collective problem solving as those students. The questions were of a high quality and very probing, and we all on the panel had to think. They are really impressive students. We continue to look to the future, and with the government having almost doubled the housing requirements for Babergh, it is vital that we work alongside communities and neighbouring councils to plan what has been asked of us. As councillors will know, we are now working on a revised joint local plan. We have joined with some of our neighbouring councils to conduct a new call for sites which launched yesterday. We are inviting residents, developers and landowners to submit locations which could be considered for planned future development for housing, employment, sports and leisure or community purposes. It's important to note that each suggested site will be considered by the planning policy team before it is decided whether it goes forward as a proposed local plan site allocation. And a quick update on local government reorganisation. As you'll know, our case for change proposing 3 unitaries for Suffolk was submitted by the deadline on the 26th of September. We now await confirmation from the government that it will be put forward for public consultation next month. Suffolk County Council continues to use some intemperate language and false information to discredit our proposal. Words like dangerous, fake geographies, double counting, and bordering on being offensive. They are making incorrect statements about the financial analysis in our business case. So far, we have refrained from commenting publicly on the detail of their case for change, preferring to concentrate on the merit of ours. But I will say now that they are continuing to promote the populist election manifesto pledges which much of their business case appears to be based on and which they are in no position to guarantee. Cases for change must be based on addressing the government's 6 criteria, not second-guessing what an incoming unitary administration might want to do. We will be engaging with the public through the forthcoming government consultation to explain why we think our case for change offers the best future for the county, a message that is clearly resonating with residents. The leader of Norfolk County Council has also been making strong attacks on the 3 unitary proposal there. It is clear that both county councils are getting rattled by the opposition that their own proposals have had. They aren't popular. And finally, I would like to confirm to Council that Councillor Helen Davis has assumed the role of Deputy Political Leader on behalf of the Lib Dem Group. Thank you, Chair.
Some clarification? No, thank you. We move on. I will now ask the Head of Democratic Services to report on any petitions received.
We've received no petitions, Chair.
Questions by the public?
None received.
Questions by councillors?
Also none received.
Wonderful. We now move to Community Governance Review of 2025, paper PC 2521. And I invite David Connors to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully Council have had the opportunity to read the report. We've received a number of inquiries regarding governance of parish councils, which then led us to bring this paper to Council to propose a full district-wide community governance review. The recommendations are set out as an agreement with the Community Governance Review Working Group, with recommendation 3.1 to undertake the Community Governance Review and approve the terms of reference, to task the Community Governance Review to conduct the review, to delegate authority to the Electoral Registration Officer to oversee and deliver the Community Governance Review and the statutory guidance for the duration of the review. As part of the discussion within the Community Governance Working Group, recommendation 3.4 is included that the Council reserves the rights to approve the draft recommendations of the Community Governance Review, and including within that the consultation strategy of those recommendations, and for the monitoring officer to ensure that all delegation is properly recorded in the Council's governance. That is the Community Governance Review paper.
Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Rees, and a seconder? Councillor Ward. I now invite questions. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. Can I point out on page 22, on paragraph 3.2, there is a mistake on the date. I think it should read May 27. Or 20, yeah, but not 23. Sorry. 27. Sorry, Deborah, you're
Sorry, Councillor, I'm trying to find the bit that you're referencing there. On page 22.
3.2 on page 22.
Yeah, apologies, Councillor, we'll correct that.
I do have a question, though. some of us are a bit concerned about the time limit for the discussion for parish councils. Many of them in October have already had their parish council meetings, and when you look at the 7th of November, there'll be many of them that will be meeting after that date. So I'm asking if it's possible to have an extension to that period. Thank you.
Certainly, Councillor. So in preparation for this, we wrote to all of the parish councils in May of this year to inform them that this paper was going to be coming to council for council's approval for a CGR. Since then, we've had discussions with a number of parish councils that have taken it to their parish councils meetings, either to confirm that they would not be putting in a submission or for them to discuss it. So yes, you're right, the period for them to submit their requests is a limited period, but parish councils have had since May to take this through their relevant governance periods. So we can obviously look at reviewing the timescale with the Community Governance Review, however, working group, but they have had an extended period of time to take this through their governance processes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ward, do you have a question?
Actually, no, it was another correction. On page 27, paragraph 10.3, the ministry has changed. It's now housing communities and local government. Thankfully, we've lost the vacuous living up part of the name.
We'll correct that as well, Councillor.
Okay, if there aren't any... Oh. Councillor Carruthers?
Thank you, Chair. It's just another mistake. You spelt my name wrong. It's C-A, not C-U. Sorry. On page 18. Thank you.
Apologies, correct that too,
I just thought I
Councillor.
corrected.
Okay. Can we move to debate, or do you have a question, Councillor Riley?
I do, Madam Chairman, with your permission.
As ever.
Let's go back to this 3.2. Question is, Mr. Collins, how many layers of review did this paper go through until it was passed to come to us?
So I would have reviewed it myself, Councillor. It was with the Community Governance Working Group to review the paper before it then went to Democratic Services. So from the author to, I guess is the answer to the question, Councillor.
No? So with errors like this creeping in, and yours is not the only one. We seem to have one error per meeting here from various departments, but yours is particularly interesting because the question then it comes, what confidence can our council and our electorate have in the figures and data produced by yourselves?
Noted, Councillor, and we will ensure that further proofing happens to the reports before we bring the Community Governance Review reports to Council again.
We can accept that we live in a world of cut and paste, and I would challenge anybody in this chamber to never have delivered an error through that system. So can we now move to debate? And don't all rush at once. Councillor Ward?
Yeah, on that theme, I completely agree with what you said, Chair. These papers are lengthy, complicated. Errors may occasionally creep in, but it's quite clear that we all read the papers, we all spot the errors, they get corrected. No problem.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Councillor McCraw?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important to point out the indicative timeline in section 8 of the report. It doesn't seem to me as though there's any democratic deficit there. Everything is covered as it should be. And by the way, this is not my first rodeo. We've done these before. I've been a member of a parish council for longer than I've been here. This is essential. Parish councils, generally speaking, will not wish to change their governance arrangements. but we should allow them the possibility of doing so. Otherwise, we're not allowing them to be represented properly. So I'm happy to support, and this is, after all, just the launch of the process. It's not an actual decision. That is what the process is for.
Very much. Anyone else, or can we move to the vote? I will now ask the Head of Democratic Services to conduct the electronic vote.
Many thanks, Chair. Councillors, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Riley, can I take your vote verbally?
I approve.
Approve. Councillor Harden, are you having difficulty voting on your machine?
Yes, apologies. I'm afraid I'm well offside tonight, but
No.
I'm in favour of the vote, yes.
Are you voting in favour, or are you voting... how do you vote, Councillor?
For.
For. Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Rodent, have you managed to vote? You have. Excellent. And I've still got... Oh, wonderful. Oh, brilliant. Okay. That's 26 votes for, and that motion is passed.
We now move on to item 9 on the agenda, the Licensing Act 2003, Statement of Licensing Policy 2026 to 2031, Statutory 5-yearly revision. And this is paper BC 2522. I invite Councillor Deborah Saw to introduce the report and to move the recommendations. Councillor Saw.
Thank you, Chair. I'm introducing report number BC 2522 and seeking the Council's approval to adopt and implement this revised statement of licensing policy. The Head of Public Protection, Tracy Howard, is here to answer any detailed questions members may have. I would also like to commend the work of Kate Pearsall, licensing team leader, and her team as part of, who did so much work to get this review, this statement of policy to us. The Licensing Act of 2003 requires licensing authorities like ourselves to publish a written statement of licensing policy which must be formally reviewed at least every 5 years. This statement has been approved by the Council's Licensing and Regulatory Committee, who agreed at its meeting of 8th May this year a 6-week consultation period for the revised statement. And if no representations or objections were received during that period, it should proceed to full council. No objections or representations were received, but I should point out that the council did receive communications from 2 license holders complementing the statement. The consultation was carried out in line with the Licensing Act requirements and included the police, fire and rescue, public health, all parish councils and licence holders of various types. They all received letters and the consultation was supported by a social media campaign. Appendix C lists all those that were consulted. The statement has been amended to reflect the additional aims of the Home Office Statutory Section 182 of the Licensing Act, and it must also respond to any pertinent issues that have arisen in the districts. As a council, we recognise the value and importance of the hospitality trade, not only to the local economy, but also in ensuring that our area provides a welcoming experience to visitors and also provides opportunities for our residents to meet in convivial surroundings, whether it be in a pub or a village hall. But we also have to balance those interests with the four key objectives of the Act: the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance, and protection of children from harm. We last reviewed our policy in 2021. The key changes to the statement are summarised in Appendix B of the report. These changes relate to national planning policy. Existing businesses and facilities should not have unreasonable restrictions placed on them as a result of development permitted after they were established. Legal obligations under the Equalities Act. Violence against women and girls. So we require premises to have a women's policy, a safe space, very much like them to be part of the Ask Angela initiative, drink spiking, and also incident reporting. Public safety, reflecting Martin's Law, to strengthen the security of public premises and events from terrorism. The Council team works hard to develop effective working relationships with licence holders, and this has led to very good compliance. We recognise that this is a challenging time for the hospitality industry, so do not wish to add to the regulatory burden, but we have to observe and comply with the regulations. We have received 12 new premises licence applications in Babergh this year. These include restaurants, village hall and community venues, shops, and a bar. Given the investment needed, I would argue that this is very positive given the current economic climate. We've also had no licences surrendered, which again is a positive. So I should like to recommend this policy to Council. Thank you.
So, and seconder in Councillor Parker. Questions by members? Happy to move to debate? We move to debate. Who? Laura.
Councillor Smith. Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to support this document. It's very thorough. And as I said in May, I'm particularly pleased to see the section on violence against women and girls, which underlines the Council's support of that.
Councillor Derek Davis, then Councillor McLaren.
Yeah, thank you. Totally endorse what Councillor Smith has just said and totally endorse everything that Councillor Sora said. And I want to add that I think it's truly a reflection on how well the district is doing in terms of our tourism, our whole economic development, which I'm responsible for, because all the pubs that I'm aware of totally support this, and they go out of their way to make sure that their premises are kept up to absolute top standard. Our teams who do the hygiene ratings constantly going in there, checking and making sure the 5 stars. The Ask Angela one is really important, and I'm delighted to report, as you know, I like to do my homework on establishments around the peninsula, and we have a new pub that's opened and obviously got a new licence, the Wild Rabbit at Harpstead, which I can personally endorse as well. But it's a great paper, and it's really helpful, and I know the police are really pleased with it as well. As you know, Councillor, because of your position on the police panel as well. So yeah, absolutely top draw. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm here to support this paper. A lot of hard work went into this. And Tracy, I want to say thank you to you and the licensing team who work very much under the radar normally. We don't see a lot of evidence of their work, but they do work very hard. And actually, they've helped my job as the newly elected chairman of licensing, and I'm grateful for that, but thank you very much.
McLaren, anyone else? Councillor McCraw?
looks like the peninsula is piling in tonight, particularly on licensing, in which I take a very keen interest. Actually, the first committee I was elected to was licensing. I've taken an interest in it throughout that. Also worked in the trade most of my life. And I still talk to people in the trade, as does Councillor Davis, and many others do, I'm sure. I'm still questioned on the principles of licensing, but they're generally accepted. And in fact, I've been saying this for some years now in the committee, that this is actually, the Licensing Act 2003, is one of the better pieces of legislation that exists in this country. Not many people are going to give credit to that particular government, but in this instance, they got it right. There will be changes. I know they were proposed at the Labour Party conference just a few weeks ago, but this is a really good, solid piece of work, and I'll echo that point on our licensing team. The reason you don't hear anything is because they're doing such a good job that it is dealt with. Things, licensees who have problems are dealt with. Issues that come up are dealt with, and everybody is consulted. And the fact that the trade itself had no representations to make, I think is remarkable. I really do. So yes, absolutely endorse this. We have to do it anyway.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to add also about violence on women and girls. I think it's important that obviously I've worked in areas like licensing before and done so, and I'd like to see more action taken. I think this is a good piece of legislation because it will look at the whole aspect of documentation and background and making sure that people are safe in those environments. And it's good to see also as well, I've been involved in local authority with that in mind. It is good to see. So that's a contribution saying that violence against women and girls, we don't want to see it, but it is good to see here in this documentation.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to? No? So I will now ask the Head of Democratic Services to conduct the electronic vote.
Many thanks, Chair. Councillors, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Hurring, can I take your vote verbally?
4, please.
No problem at all. Councillor Riley, can I take your vote verbally?
4.
4. That's 26 votes for. That motion is carried.
Then on the agenda, biodiversity net gain, monitoring fees and habitat, bank, brokerage and fees. I now invite Councillor Saw to introduce the report and to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. I'm introducing this report substituting for the Cabinet Member for Heritage Planning and Infrastructure. I'm asking Council to approve the recommendation contained within paper BC 2523. This is a complex paper, and I am glad that the Director of Place, Theo Rourke, and David Clark are here to answer your questions, because I'm afraid that I will not be as qualified as they to answer them. Biodiversity net gain, BNG, is now a requirement on new developments. Developers must reinstate any biodiversity lost and then increase biodiversity on the site by a minimum of 10%. In Babergh, our supplementary planning document encourages an increase of 20%, as it is a more meaningful increase to achieve nature recovery. I should stress that the UK is one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. It's actually shameful that we are in the bottom 10% of countries, and that 1 in 6 of wildlife species in our country is at risk of extinction. The current government believes that you have to make a choice between nature and housing. This administration does not believe this. Biodiversity net gain is new, it's complex, and it places new responsibilities on our council. This paper suggests how we can fund some of the costs associated with those responsibilities, and to delegate authority to the Director of Place and the Cabinet Member for Heritage, Planning and Infrastructure to review and amend the schedule of charges. Firstly, the duty to monitor biodiversity net gain is for 30 years after a site is developed. This is an unprecedented duty. There is no other that we have that has such a lifespan. This is mandatory in only 2 instances. Where net gain is delivered off-site, our priority is to get biodiversity net gain delivered on the relevant site. Where that is not possible, it can be delivered elsewhere. Where net gain is delivered on-site, but there will be an impact on significant habitat creation or protection, we'll ask councils to approve the principle of charging monitoring fees. At regular intervals, we must review the sites to make sure the planned enhancements are taking place. So we need approval for the principle of charging monitoring fees because, as I've said, there is a cost associated with it. You will see the charging structure in the report. Minor developments will pay £11,326 up to £37,809 for large strategic developments. We are proposing this is paid as a lump sum when the Section 106 agreement is signed. I am sure officers will be able to answer questions about how these fees have been reached. They have used a biodiversity monitoring fee calculator tool to predict further future costs, and we've also looked at the approach used by other councils. The second part of the report highlights the role of habitat banks. They are sites where habitats are created, restored, or enhanced to generate biodiversity units. The standard metric used to assess the biodiversity value of a site that can then be sold to developers to offset the environmental impact of their development. The aim of the brokerage service is to support and guide developers to comply with DEFRA's off-site biodiversity net gain. All off-site habitats must be registered on the Natural England Off-Site Biodiversity Gain Site Register. Currently, there are no habitat banks or responsible bodies within Babergh, which means any off-site biodiversity compensation will not be achieved locally. This is not what we want. So we propose to develop a habitat brokerage service to regulate habitat banks within our districts to deliver the best ecological outcomes for our districts and to ensure the council is confident to enter into an agreement to secure the land for the next 30 years. We are asking council to approve the work underway to develop a habitat bank brokerage service and specifically to approve the principle of charging a fee for this service, delegate to the Director of Place in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Heritage, Planning and Infrastructure the authority to agree the detailed fee arrangements and to amend them as good practice indicates, and to establish the principles, procedures and requirements for securing off-site biodiversity land and locations. The relevant criterion for suitability and the legal arrangements to secure such land to deliver off-site biodiversity net gain. As I said, this is complicated, and which is why we need to charge for monitoring it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I omitted to remind councillors that this paper was reissued and you will have received it as part of your tabled papers. The reissue was caused by the need for clarification of a couple of items. A seconder in Councillor Jameson. We now have questions. Councillor Wyman.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor sort of said, it is a complicated subject and complex. Fortunately, my question is quite simple. I've read through the fee proposals. It all seems to make sense, and I'm absolutely supportive of 100% recovery. Obviously within the fee proposal, there seems to be a significant non-variable charge, which relates to category 1, 2, 3 and 4. Two questions really. First question is, I couldn't trace Appendix 1, which was supposed to be attached to the paper, which gave a more detailed breakdown of how we derived the fees. And question 2 really is, are we content to potentially prejudice smaller developers against larger developers simply because of the much larger flat charge?
Thank you, Councillor Wyman. I think I will have to defer to the officers on this. Is it in the existing? Yeah, so Appendix 1 is in the original paper.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. I mean, it's been pretty difficult, I think, to give complete confidence as to, I mean, looking ahead 30 years, it's quite hard to actually, forecast how fees look today and how they would look in 30 years' time. I think the best we've done is to have a very close look at the approach taken by others. Some have got extremely complicated methods that look at the habitat type, its distinctiveness. They've got many more ways to do that. We've taken a more simplistic approach to that, and I think we probably adopted through the cost calculator that Councillor Saw highlighted, probably the most simplistic way of describing it to the developer. As Councillor Saw has kind of indicated, I mean, the fees range from 11,000 up to 37, but you are looking to that's a cost that we need to kind of build into our budgets for the next 30 years. So it has been complicated, but I would also say, and I think we've picked this up within the recommendations, that we do carry out annual reviews of all fees and charges, and I think this is the one that we'll be looking at most carefully, just to make sure it kind of accords with local partners and everything else. So it's set now, but we will come back to it, I think, many times in the future.
May I have a quick follow-up? This is completely new, so we're fixing a charge, which I have to say is likely not to go down and probably will only go up. So I think it's really important that when we fix a charge on something quite as new as this, we need to be absolutely sure that what we do charge is accurate. And it still concerns me that we are potentially prejudicing smaller developers against the larger corporates.
Similar to Councillor Wyman, really. Could you confirm when the BNG requirement is engaged? Will it be on one single property, or is it a number up to 9?
Thank you, Councillor. It's up to 9, but the charge only relates to situations where the gain has to be achieved away from the development site, so that it won't apply in every given situation. So it's off-site development and it's on-site where the habitats lost fall within the most kind of significant categories as well. So it's a small concentration of biodiversity net gain outcomes, not every single case. So it's up to 9 is the first, and then we incrementally kind of increase the fees right up to the highest range, which is the large strategic developments.
So it could happen with one property?
It could happen with one property, yes.
Councillor Potter, then Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Chair. And as already said, it is a complex issue, obviously, with all different types of businesses has been proven the case already. I just wanted to say about language, because I think that's very important. We've got key information 4.1 on page 94, the joint local plan, which we've spent a lot of time on, trying to get together before this term and the last term, imposes a 20% B&G objective rather than require. And I think that's important to say that we're only requiring a 20% G objective on the joint local plan. It wouldn't be too controversial to say that we require a 20% B&G objective. So it's just a reiteration on the language used on the key information of 4.1 imposed. I find an issue with rather than require.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. I think one of the reasons why we put in a 20% biodiversity net gain objective into the SPD was to actually put in a stretch target. We recognise that it may be in some cases quite difficult for some developers to achieve, but we feel that it is important to, if we can achieve it, to ensure that it is secured. I do take your point about the choice of language, and I don't actually think it's semantic, but perhaps the officers could elucidate on that, please.
But happy to accept the point. Requires, I think, is a better way to. I think the point we were making, Councillor, is that the national arrangements require a minimum of 10. I think with Councillor support, we've been a bit more ambitious than that. That was simply the point I was trying to bring across in the paper, but require, I think, could easily substitute impose.
Okay, thank you very much. That's great.
Thank you. Councillor McCraw, then Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you, Chair. I promised David I wouldn't do this, but there you go. I'm understanding this, and I want some clarification, that we are not proposing to replace the requirements we already have within the planning framework for biodiversity. This is to pay for the administrative costs to support this policy primarily, and maybe that might be mostly on-site, sometimes on-site, but primarily off-site development. That seems to me to be the focus. Is that correct? And then I've got a follow-up to that as well.
Yes, it is correct. It's common practice, I think, amongst councils to impose a fee, given that there will be quite a intense level of responsibility on your officers to make sure that the plans that the developers have to enhance and restore habitats, those kind of commitments are met. So we have to look carefully at what they're saying. We have to periodically go out to site and have a look for ourselves. So there is quite a lot of work to be undertaken in this regard, and I think it's reasonable under those circumstances for us to seek to recover some of those costs from the development.
So within the recommendations, I'm reading it this way, that we are giving the Director of Place the authority to vary this. This is a starting point, is my direction, thought. Has it been considered whether it might be necessary to have a pro rata charging structure for larger developments than Category 4? Just, proportionately. The recommendations seem to indicate that would be possible for the Director of Place to be able to institute should it be necessary. Am I right, or am I guessing?
There was some discussion, as we know, in the Cabinet briefing as to the position that we'd adopt with those large developments, which are naturally phased over a number of years. And I think we've taken the view, and we set it out in the paper, that we're going to give developers the option. They can pay us the lump sum up front if they choose to do so, but we would be willing to kind of accept a proposal for those fees to be staggered in line with the the phasing of the scheme. We can potentially look at, I mean, we've chosen 4 categories. Some have chosen more and some have chosen less. And I think it's right that we're saying that we need to have a look at this regularly and annually. I think the alignment of how we've undertaken this approach, given local government review, changes upon us as well. So I think we are alive to what's going on around us and would continue to kind of reflect those changes accordingly.
Thank you, David. My thought, Chair, was to bring out the flexibility in the arrangements for the future, using the officers' abilities to adapt.
Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you, Chair. Really, this is just a clarification. Is the monitoring fee, is that for both on-site and off-site BNG, or just off-site? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. It's all off-site, but it's on-site where the habitat lost would fall within the category of it being very distinctive. In other words, very hard to create. So they are the 2 circumstances. So we won't be monitoring everything, but it's essentially those categories of development that we would have to.
Okay, Councillor Holt, then Councillor Ward, and then...
Lovely. I just want clarification. This is all under an SPD, is that correct?
Supplementary planning
Yeah.
document.
When will they continue to exist till? Because I understand that they are going to expire, is it 2027? And if so, what will we do to introduce something to cover this?
The councillor was asking, as regards SPDs, they actually, he was asking whether they end in 2027. And if so, what would we do to replace them?
Councillor, I'm going to defer to Tom Barker, if I may, on that question.
If it helps, as the former Director of Planning in place when BNG became a requirement, in essence, the local plan itself contains policies that require BNG to be met. So that still stands. The law will still exist. We then have a supplementary planning document that imposes our objective to go beyond the lawful minimum of 10% and seek to achieve 20%. Supplementary planning documents will become supplementary documents under the new planning regime that hasn't yet found its way entirely through Parliament. But at some point, the supplementary planning document will be replaced by a supplementary document, and I would anticipate that we will then bring a paper that changes the name of our various supplementary planning documents into supplementary documents and continues to do that. So it will be, we will need to make some changes, but they'll be minor. They'll be about the way that these things are described. If I can just give one piece of clarification whilst I'm on my feet, just to give context, where BNG has been secured through the planning process, that has been achieved 400 times on-site and 3 times off-site. So the degree of off-site provision is very, very minimal, and the priority is always to have it on-site or to replace the type of habitat that is being lost, which isn't necessarily always to be found in a locally based habitat bank. So I think there is something, I kind of hear the tone around wanting the BNG gain to be held locally. We are a country with really depleted biodiversity, as said, and it may well be that actually, in terms of supporting the country's biodiversity, you're better off if you lose some habitat here, replacing that with a like habitat that might be elsewhere within the country. So I take the point about wanting local biodiversity gain, but actually for the good of the country's biodiversity, you may actually see it better if it's not delivered immediately locally, but actually replaces habitat for habitat, even though that's elsewhere. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Ward, and then we'll move to debate.
Yeah, I realise there's some concern over how broad some of these categories are, but clearly we have to have categories to make the charging structure simple. But just for clarification, looking at, as an example, the lowest category, the 0 to 9 dwellings, do we know roughly how different the monitoring costs would be for, say, 1 or maybe 5 or 6 dwellings? If those monitoring costs are broadly similar, then I can understand the fact that the fee is going to be set the same for each, depending, and not prorated according to each individual dwelling. So, can you give us some indication of the actual monitoring costs, particularly in that first category, comparing, say, 1 dwelling with 5 or maybe 6 or 9 dwellings?
The monitoring duty lasts for 30 years, and there'll be a series of technical checks and balances that we have to kind of undertake, primarily by working with our ecologists. So we know there'll be quite a lot of hours set aside to actually checking the information that will kind of come into us and going out and having a look for ourselves. I mean, how the cost calculator has been, if you like, how it's been worked up is for us to have our best estimate go at how many officer hours we think those checks and balances would take. So I mean, that's how we've done it, and as I think I said earlier, we've had a close look at how others have done it, and I think we're all adopting a kind of a similar principle. At a certain 8 events over 30 years, there'll be some activity that we need to undertake. We sat down and we worked through how long we think that would take. Now, I think that will be an average. There'll be, I suspect, some work that will be a lot easier for us to review, and there'll be work that's a bit more complicated that perhaps we have to go out. So I think there is some science behind it, but we'll still have to keep a close look. I mean, we haven't entered a monitoring year yet, Councillor Ward. I mean, that's, I think, our difficulty, and I think that's what other local planning authorities are saying. I think knowledge and confidence that will be gained, I think, as we carry through the work that we've never done before.
We'll now move to debate, so who would like to open? Councillor Dowling.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo the concerns expressed by my learned colleague, Councillor Wyman and Councillor Holt, about the differential in charges between minor and larger developments. I did a quick calculation. A development of 9 dwellings would pay £1,258 per dwelling. Fewer than 9 would pay more. Whereas a strategic development of only 200 houses would pay £189 per dwelling. That doesn't seem at all fair, nor does it probably reflect the genuine cost of monitoring biodiversity net gain for that larger development. So I would like to suggest that officers look again at equalising the differentials in fees so they match the differentials in sizes per dwelling. Thank you.
Councillor Wyman.
Thank you, concur with Councillor Dowling. I mean, we've been asked to sign off something which is quite significant, I think, as a first charge basis. You'd normally see some kind of de minimis rule which would help to protect the sort of smaller developers and make sure people are looked after properly. On the and we're also missing Appendix 1, which should really be with the papers, so we'd have a more detailed explanation of what's available. If I'm completely honest, and I'm not generally a disruptive kind of person, I don't feel able to support this particular paper without some additional detailed information, and I'd definitely potentially vote against it.
Councillor Saw.
Councillor Wyman, there is an Appendix 1. It's on the previous document that you were sent. The tabled document is actually just a reworking of the original document. The appendix is on the first document. I'm sorry, this sounds like the chalice from the palace. I'm sorry. And it's page 103. However, I do take what you and Councillor Dowling have said, and I am sure that officers would revisit these charges or at least explain with perhaps more detail how the calculation was arrived at. That is in Appendix 1, and knowing your forensic skills, Councillor Wyman, I'm sure you'll be able to work it out.
Thank you. I totally understand the councillor's concerns, but if you forgive me a little bit going off piece, but I regard this particular paper like a dandelion. So I'm sure virtually everyone in this room has at some point or other in their lives, after the yellow flower has gone, seen the seeds and then blown it for a wish. You don't know where those seeds are going to go, where they're going to end up, but they'll end up and they'll grow and it will get better. And the dandelion is a symbol of resilience and strength, and it brings hope and it brings wishes. And I see this paper is exactly doing that. Biodiversity net gain is really important to us. As a council, because we have to balance the books, and so we need to make sure we can pay our way forward going on this. And I believe, as the officer David Clark has quite brilliantly, eloquently put, you know, this is a step going forward. There will be times when it will be looked at, and the charges will be looked at as well, and you know, to make it equitable. But just like the dandelion, you know, it brings us hope and it brings us best wishes, and it's resilient. Dandelions grow through cracks, as we know, and I'm sure this paper will survive the test of time. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to debate? Councillor Ward and Councillor Holt.
Yeah, I think I'll be a bit more prosaic than Councillor Davis. I just focus on the money. Yeah, I think we all agree that perhaps that the charging schedule could do with refinement, and I'm sure it will get refined over time. But it is important that we get this in place now. It's a very important subject, as others have articulated, but we must have that fee structure in place so that we do start charging, because the monitoring costs will become significant, and we do have a principle that where we can set fees and charges, we must recover our costs fully. And we need to approve this evening so that we can start this process now and refine it and improve it as time goes on. Thank you.
Councillor Holt.
Yep, so to my colleagues over there, I feel it's weighted the wrong way. I think you're penalising the small developments from 0 to 9, and where you look at the profit of these types of developments, they're in the category 4 and category 3 and even category 2. They're not in 0 to 9 in category 1. So I think it is totally weighted the wrong way, and I would like to see a revised charging schedule submitted back to council before I can support this paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parker.
Yeah, and on that very point then, actually, Madam Chair, if I may, I appreciate that we're in debate.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, because it is a very complex paper, and I'm just wondering, with absolute due respect to my colleagues who have raised the issues here, and Councillor Holt, but are we perhaps not fully understanding this charging structure? And I wonder, even though we're in debate, I wonder if we can just seek some more clarification, either from the Chief Planning Officer or with regards to this charging structure. Because it is important. I mean, because otherwise, what are we going to do this evening? Are we going? Yeah.
No longer planning anymore. So, as Chief Operating Officer, I'm happy to try and provide some clarification as a qualified planner and as the director who was in control, as I said, when B&G came in. We have run this through our developers forum. We have spoken to developers and planning agents and others about how we should be implementing this, and the strong desire was something clear, something simple and something known, because it then gets built into land value, it gets built into the purchase costs from those smaller developers, because it's a known cost that can then come out. And as I tried to say earlier, the absolute priority is to get biodiversity net gain on site. And it's almost an incentive, I suppose, to deliver on site so that they can avoid the costs of off-site provision and the requirement to use that brokerage service. So very happy, and I know that David, Richard Palmy, our biodiversity manager, has been heavily involved with this. Jonathan Ward, our climate nature recovery manager, also involved, and Philip as chief planning officer. If members want more dialogue, more discussion to understand the way it's been framed, we have sought best practice, we've followed guidance, we've taken what we perceived was the best of what people were doing elsewhere, having taken a little bit of learning. So I recognise that the way it's played through, in the fact that the appendix on page 103 of the agenda pack wasn't included again when the tabled paper was sent out, so some councillors will simply have looked at the tabled paper and then clearly didn't see the appendix. But the information is there that you can check back through and work through. And certainly I think there's no desire amongst your officers to introduce something that penalises smaller developers over larger developers, recognising that most of your housing delivery actually comes through those smaller developers rather than the bigger ones. So I think there may be a little bit of the report is quite complex, and perhaps we should have flushed some of this out through some kind of briefing beforehand, or provided an opportunity for some of these questions in another context, another environment. But hopefully it gives you confidence to know ultimately that the vast majority of B&G is on site. I think the likelihood that it will put off smaller developers is very, very small actually as a real thing, and it has been produced as a result of dialogue and investigating what others have done before, if that helps.
Okay, now we'll have Councillor Grandin, then Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Chair. I think all of us here recognise the importance of this paper, but some people have concerns about a small part of it. And I wondered what would be, so that we could get through the principle of this paper, but enable us to feel secure that the figures can be looked at. Is it possible perhaps to add a further recommendation to simply say that, we approve it, but with the knowledge that the team will re-examine the figures? Is it possible to have a recommendation like that? Because I think members might then feel more comfortable.
Councillor, I would draw you to Article 3.3 of the recommendations, which is delegate authority to the Director of Place to at least annually review the schedule of charges and as needed be authorised to amend the schedule in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Heritage. So I think your suggestion is already in the recommendation.
Perhaps, because it doesn't say it's actually going to be done now, that sort of suggests that it could
does
be done
say
if everyone,
at least annually. So it could be done every 6 months.
Sooner than that. Or perhaps other people in the debate may wish to come back on that or not, if they're happy with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Riley.
The rule of whatever we do is to avoid unintended consequences. And the unintended consequences of this charging structure is that we disadvantage the smaller developer. And we also disadvantage the householder, the citizens. So So I will be against this because I see the charging structure being totally inappropriate to what we are trying to achieve.
Councillor Suffolk can wrap up.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I understand that householder applications are not subject to this. And secondly, I'd like to thank Mr. Barker for clarifying the fact that it might focus the mind on some of the smaller applications to make sure that their BNG is on site. So I am minded to support this. Thank you.
Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Chair. I'm minded to look at these figures and compare them to SIL when we introduced Community Infrastructure Levy. One of the advantages we said and the industry accepted was that they had certainty. And there's a certain lack of certainty about the cost of providing biodiversity net gain. This is actually not about the biodiversity net gain itself, it's about the administration of that. Now, I know that a number of members have raised the point about the figures not being available, but there they are. Copy of Category 1, Category 2, Category 3, Category 4 applications. It gives the figures. It breaks down the number of people who would be involved. It breaks down the fact that this is a 30-year cost. It's spread. And I'm looking at the figures in there, and compared with what we charge for SIL, it's not very much, particularly as you figure it's a one-off cost. So I don't think we're looking at this as though, yeah, maybe a little bit up front, but that's why the Director of Place and officers will be able to negotiate and talk to people. I think we're over-worrying about this. It's not that much in the scheme of things when you consider the cost of a house, even between 1 and 9. And it's not that much in terms of SIL, so I shall be supporting this, and I would urge other members to do the same.
Thank you. Now, before we move to the vote, Councillor Saw, do you wish to summarise?
Thank you, Chair. I do think I agree with Councillor McCraw on this particular point. Members should also reflect on the fact that our planning income is down. We are not getting as many developers coming to us for approvals. So therefore, our income is down, and this is a very time-intensive process. The figure, as other councillors have pointed out, is over 30 years. It can be adjusted if we find that smaller developers are having difficulties with it. However, I should stress to members that small developers and larger developers have been consulted on this particular item, and we are following the practice of other councils. So they will not necessarily consider that we are being unreasonable, and I don't think we are being unreasonable. I have pointed out that this is a particularly important measure, as in the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, we have been, as many councils have, given a much higher target and of 86% more planning permissions. And I'm sure that none of us wish to see those permissions given and there be a detriment to the community and their enjoyment of the countryside or the green spaces that we know, because they tell us, they love so much. So I do actually support this and ask you all to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now ask the Head of Democratic Services to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Horan, can I take your vote verbally?
For.
For. Councillor Riley, can I take your vote verbally?
Against.
For and against. Thank you, members. That is 21 for, 4 against, and 1 abstention. That motion is carried.
We now move to Babergh, State of the District Report for 2025, and this is paper BC 2524, and I invite Councillor McCraw to introduce the report and to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. I know what you're all thinking. Does he ever stop? I'm very pleased to introduce paper BC 2524, the Babergh State of the District Report for 2025. I'm supported by Sarah Wilcock, the Director for Performance and Resilience. That's it. They keep changing the title, and Joe Hobbs, who's our Director of Strategic Policy, or our, sorry, Chief Officer of Strategic Policy. This is the third example of the Babergh State of the District Report. It's quite lengthy. There's a lot of stuff in there. I think it's quite easily organised for people to be able to follow what it's about. It's about us, where we live, who we are. It describes our setting and population, our climate change and environment, our community strength, our resilience, and it also provides some data. This is a resource we should be able to use as members to be able to describe where we live and who we are. So, yes, we know an awful lot about our district, and this is a way. It's all public, open source information. This comes mostly from the Suffolk Observatory, although there are other sources. A comparison is also made against the Thriving Places Index. It's an assessment against certain criteria produced by the Centre for Thriving Places, which looks at how, not only some of the figures, but how people feel about where they live. Now, the strengths that have been identified in this overall report, I'm not going to go through every section, are that the health and well-being of our residents is good, along with our safety, community cohesion, and our culture. People volunteer, people are involved, and they like living here. Our community life survey is very positive, both for Babergh and Mid-Suffolk, compared not only to England, but the region in general. Our carbon emissions continue to reduce. Some of the challenges, and there are challenges, identified in the overall report is that our rurality makes our environmental challenges harder to meet. We have to use more private transport, greater distances than urban areas. We have more use of oil-fired central heating. The affordability of our housing compared to earnings is more challenging in Babergh than it is in Mid-Suffolk. So although the ratio of house price to residence-based earnings, the average wage or the average earnings of people, is still high, it's dropped. It was pushing 12, multiple of 12, it's now getting closer to 10. That's still not affordable, but at least we know where we stand and it's getting better. We have an increasing number of homelessness assessments being necessary. We have an increasing number of children living in relative low-income families. And in Babergh, the TPI shows that there are challenges around adult education. That's partly due to the lower number of working-age adults. Overall, the report confirms the data behind our priorities hasn't fundamentally changed. That's only the third report. We wouldn't expect huge changes in a 3-year period. But we need to confirm that our priorities are the right ones. And we believe that this is the case. The plans remain relevant and should continue to be developed and delivered for our communities and places. So my recommendation, I'm proposing the two recommendations, is one, to note the State of District report, and the two, to note that it reconfirms those priorities in the Our Plan for Babergh or Mid-Suffolk. Yep, I think that pretty much covers it. I'm happy to take any questions with support.
Thank you, Councillor McGraw. Before we take questions, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Henry. Questions? Shall we move to debate? Who'd like to open the debate? I will move to the vote. Thank you very much, members.
Thank you, members. That vote is now in progress. Councillor Riley, can I take a vote verbally? For. Councillor Hurring, can I take a vote verbally? For. Councillor Potter, can I take a vote verbally?
Can I just say, it's difficult to, for whatever reason, I cannot link this recommendations to say yes or no. It's just gone completely blank. There's no blue line.
Okay.
So can I just take my vote verbally, please?
Of course.
For.
No problem at all. Thank you, members. That is 26 votes for. That motion is carried.
Thank you very much. We now move to item 12 on the agenda, timetable of committee meetings 2026 to 27, paper BC 2525, and I invite the leader of the council, John Ward, to introduce the report and to move the recommendations.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, very quickly, as usual, this time of the year we have to approve the timetable of committee meetings for the forthcoming municipal year starting next May. You've got the timetable in front of you. If anyone has any issues with any of those dates, please let us know now before we go to approving and the recommendations that are listed in paragraph 2. Thank you.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor McLaren. Now, any questions? We'll move to the vote.
Thank you, members. That vote is now in progress. Councillor Potter, can I take your vote verbally? No. Councillor Hurren, can I take your vote verbally? For, no problem. Councillor Riley, can I take your vote verbally? For. Many thanks. That is 26 votes for. That is carried.
Thank you very much. We now move item 13, appointments to the Independent Remuneration Panel, paper BC 2526, and I invite Peter Randall, Head of Democratic Services, to introduce the report.
Many thanks, Chair. So hopefully everything's in the report and you've had a chance to read it. We are required to maintain a well-populated independent remuneration panel which undertakes the very important work of figuring out allowances or making recommendations around allowances for our members. After a fairly robust recruitment process, we're looking to appoint the two independent members as set out in the report, where you have biographies to let you know about their qualifications. Happy to take any questions.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Ward, you're proposing. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Saw. No questions? Then I'll move to debate. Who would like to open the debate, or shall we move to the vote? Move to the vote. So I'll ask the Head of Democratic Services to conduct the electronic vote.
Many thanks. That vote is now in progress. Councillor Riley, can I take your vote verbally? Against. Councillor Hurring, can I take your vote verbally? For. That is 25 votes for and 1 against. That motion is carried.
Thank you. Now move to item 14, which is councillor appointments. Are there any changes to placings? No. So I don't need a proposer or a seconder, do I?
No.
Motions on notice? None received? Okay. Now, the next meeting is on Tuesday, 25th of November at 5:30, and the time is 18:56, and I declare the meeting closed.